Oh, hey, neighbor. Mr. Whitehead here. Caught me at my album liner notes again. Today, I want to talk about solo piano recordings and show you my favorite. And I'm going to go chronologically. Solo piano is a genre, I guess, if you want to call it, that is often, I think, overlooked and diminished because it's often used as background music. You hear it a lot in an elevator. Maybe you hear it in a fancy hotel, or maybe at the mall they have somebody playing on a solo piano, and it's mostly drowned out by the noise of people talking over it. But in my opinion, solo piano can be an amazing way of discovering composers and hearing how they compose, and it's really stripping down the elements of composition to just this one instrument. And piano happens to be probably the best instrument to do this at because of the amount of notes you can hit at one time, being all of your fingers, at least. And other instruments just don't have that ability. So a lot of classical composers, a lot of jazz, a lot of music today is composed on piano and then written down and then moved to different instruments. So there's also something that is, I would say, very unique in the sound of a piano compared to other instruments. It is a stringed instrument, and its timbre fills up such a wide part of the sound spectrum, from the low to high. And just if you've ever had the experience of just hitting a single note, even if you can't play the piano, on the piano, listening to it ring out, that's what I'm talking about here. Not all instruments have that breadth of sound and expression here. So I want to show you some solo piano recordings that I have been listening to a lot. I really enjoy, and you can play them in the background is kind of what I like about these. And people who aren't jazz or classical fans will just let it go. But if you're alone listening very closely to this music, there is an innumerable amount of takes and ways to discover, which is what I love. That's, to me, is a great recording, is when I can always hear new things. It never gets old to me, and that is the case here. So one thing that I really appreciate about it is that it can be played as background music, but at the same time, it is definitely worth a deep dive and rewarding in that way. I'm going to do these in chronological order, and I'm going to stick to classical and jazz. These are the two genres where you're going to have the best musicianship, probably the best musicians, but also the musicianship is shown through in these genres. Other genres tend to be a little simpler, whereas classical and jazz can really let loose and be free with. So the first thing in chronological order by composer, I should say, is Bach, one of the earliest Western composers, 1750, that we have still written down music from. And here, this is Glenn Gould playing the piano, and it is the famous Goldberg Variations. So this is a pretty amazing recording. It is famous. Glenn Gould I have a better picture. There's a picture of him on the back here. But here's another album. Glenn Gould is famous, one of the most famous pianists of the 20th century. And the reason why is this album was really his breakthrough. Bach had been kind of becoming stale, and it had been played for so long and respected for so long. And Glenn Gould here took these variations that were found and really reimagined Bach. And here's an example. If you think of classical as not an expressive medium because maybe you grew up like I did playing in an orchestra and everybody was playing the same note and you felt drowned out and like your expression wasn't there. That's what pushed me into playing rock and roll. Um, it's just not the case as I've grown older, especially in these solo pieces. Um, Nobody plays Bach like Glenn Gould, and you can compare this Bach to other Bachs. It's the same written music, but it's about how they express themselves. So check out anything by Glenn Gould. Also, an eccentric guy, always wore gloves to protect his fingers, had some troubles in life. Um, Check out Glenn Gould's Goldberg Variations as a good place to start. I'm going to kind of add in a side. This is not a solo piano, but another classical pianist from the 20th century, the other most famous one, is Van Cliburn. Um, this recording, Rachmaninoff Concerto Number 3 in Carnegie Hall in 1958, is unbelievable. It is a concerto, so there's a full orchestra behind him, but the piano soars. Carnegie Hall sounds beautiful. This is one of my favorite recordings, but this is going to be full sounding. This is not solo piano. Back to solo piano. This is Rubinstein playing Liszt's. And Liszt is a great place to continue for solo piano, even though it's all the way to 1839 is when he wrote these pieces. And he is one of the early people to start breaking down rhythm and in classical music and letting it become more free and open and maybe loping. Really great recording here um, with the RCA Red Seal as well. Good place to check out. Building from Liszt is the more famous Chopin, and again, he took what Liszt has started and it continued to play with rhythm and structure, and you can really just get lost in these pieces. Maura Limpini plays Chopin's waltzes beautifully here, and I am also supremely impressed with a female pianist, especially all the way back in the 40s when this was recorded. Um, Not easy to be a female pianist in the classical world. It's very male dominated. So you needed to be exceptional to get recorded and become famous. And Maura Limpini is that. So check that out here. I also have Horowitz playing Chopin as well. This is another great album. Same thing. And this has the Polonaise Fantaisie, which is one of his more famous pieces. So Bach, Liszt, Chopin, and here we come to my favorite, Eric Satie's piano solos performed by Bill Quist. I first started listening to this album to fall asleep to. So I have trouble falling asleep, and music is actually totally the unwinds my mind is the best way I could put it for sleep, certain music especially, and that's what this music does for me. Eric Satie is a really unique figure, again another eccentric composer, and wasn't as appreciated in his time. He was alive from 1866 to 1925, but the 20th century classical composers, John Cage, Philip Glass, among others, all point to Eric Satie as a precursor to their ideas. This music, like many of these cases, but especially here, it sounds very simplistic. Repetition is used quite a bit, but it is very complex, very beautiful, and elegant. I will hazard a warning. I guess some people, my partner included, find this music infuriating, maybe because it can be very circle-like, and that can be a little dizzying and maybe boring for some people. I find it exactly the opposite. So maybe a more controversial composer, but definitely check out Eric Satie. And you're looking for first his three gymnopedids, is what I use. Gymnopedes? I don't know. You tell me how to pronounce it. It's French. Um, but that's where I started listening. But anything he's done is worth a listen, and he's becoming more and more appreciated as time goes on. So now we move into jazz, and the I'm not a big fan of early jazz, the Jelly Roll Morton stuff. I do appreciate it for what it is, for being the precursor to jazz and creating this musical structure. However, it just sounds to me pretty close at times to ragtime and a little too campy and a little hokey, like music you'd hear in the background of a silent film, which can be great, but that is tough for me to get into. Art Tatum is, to me, the first pianist who is still slightly playing in this style, but he is breaking forward. Um, it is amazing listening to this album. Um, he goes on these piano runs of scales where I swear that he's playing extra notes and adding extra beats that don't exist into the music. But it fits seamlessly. So you might not notice it at first. Again, this can be played in the background, but eventually it just kind of comes through, and you're just like, wow, like what just happened on that run? Like, how did that fit in, and how is this still working? Um, Art Tatum to me is the place to start for jazz piano, and great solo piano recordings. You can often find his stuff pretty cheap. And then the last place that I'm going to leave you here is with the monk, Thelonius. This is my favorite jazz piano recording ever. Monk is probably my favorite pianist ever. Um, I just am amazed all the time. Every time I listen to this, anytime I listen to any monk, even if he's playing with other people, even if he's playing with John Coltrane in his other famous recordings, he is doing things with rhythm, with tone, that it's often the case where you might think to yourself, if you're listening closely, did he just play a wrong note? But 3 seconds later, it's maybe it was a wrong note, maybe it wasn't. I mean, I've heard Miles Davis do this too and fix his notes by on the spot by composing and trying to find solutions out of his problem by playing a wrong note, or if a different bandmate has played a wrong note. I know that Miles will change what has been done to try to create this piece. Monk is that guy here. He is the glue that holds everything together, but now it's just him. And his mastery of rhythm, of tone, of everything shines through. There is nobody like him, and I just can't say enough about how astounding he is as an artist. And I want to know even more about him. So this is, I would say, actually the best place to start. It is amazing background music. You can play it at a dinner. You can play it whenever. But I also urge you, with this recording, as with all of these recordings, and whenever there's solo piano being played, take a closer listen. I'm not going to say that all of it is good, but if you're pairing a great pianist with a great composition, it it is a genre, solo piano, where you can just get lost, and the rewards for close listening really are limitless. The last recording I want to talk about really combines both of the classical and jazz genres into one, and it is the Cologne concert. Keith Jarrett playing his Cologne concerts. Unfortunately, I don't have the vinyl LP. I do have a tape, and a friend had lent me the vinyl for a while, and I plan on buying it at my first opportunity. But this is a concert in 1974 in Cologne, Germany, and Keith Jarrett, accomplished pianist. If you don't know, he played with Miles Davis a bunch, among others. But just an amazing pianist. And here, you might think as you're listening to it, and nobody told you, that this was a classical. These were classical pieces that were composed before playing. And I do believe that there probably was some vague ideas, maybe chord structures, as jazz musicians often do. Um, but this is improvisation, and it is outstanding. The recording is beautiful, and it's really amazing to hear an artist improvise in this skilled way for so long, and also to harken back. To me, it's almost a history because it touches all the way back into Western music and Western classical tradition, and brings it into jazz and makes it relevant, in 1975 in a jazz player's context. Um, Really great recording. I definitely recommend checking it out. One of the other cool things is Keith Jarrett gets so lost in the music that you can hear some of his noises that he's making because it is just solo piano, and I've heard him do this in other recordings. He just makes an inaudible vocal noises, or sorry, audible vocal noises, just because he's so lost in the music, which has occurred to me on occasion while playing. But you can tell how deep he is into it here. So the Cologne concert in Germany, Keith Jarrett, 1974. And with that, I just wanted to remind you that your listening is unique because you're the one hearing it, and it's your journey, and that makes it special. So continue on, and I'll see you at the next Everyday Audio.